Welcome everyone, it's Michael Dehaan from Quantum Leap Global. And I've got Anthony Perl with me today. How are you, Anthony?
Really well, Michael. Great to be with you.
I'm glad to have you. So Anthony is the Director and Principal of Communications and Marketing Agency, CommTogether. And you've been doing that for over 10 years. So congratulations.
Yeah, it's amazing. 10 years. It just kind of whizzes by. It's fascinating, isn't it? You've been the same where you make this decision to start the business and you blink and wow, it just.
I think that's like raising children.
Oh, yes.
You blink and they're 21.
Yep.
The reason I asked you to come on this interview and to sort of share it with my community is I do a lot of work around voice and visibility, mainly with women, and we've known each other for well over a year now, and a lot of the stuff you're doing is the storytelling side.
Very
and
much.
It's really moving away from that. I think I'm going to call it traditional marketing, but I'm certainly not an expert. And it's just a different way of what buyers or what people are looking for in businesses and understanding the person behind the business, understanding their story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the critical thing, isn't it? It's there's a lot of discussion around storytelling, and there has been for some time, but being able to unpack it and tell it in an interesting fashion, is often challenging. And so that's, some of the stuff that I have been doing in more recent times. And, we've spoken before, away from the camera, but I've been heavily involved as well in disability and non-for-profit organizations over an extended period of time as well. And coupled with a background in the media originally and experience in the corporate sector and in the business, small and medium business sector as well, it's sort of, there's a commonality there. There are stories to be told on all different levels, which engage audiences, and they're just, people just default to selling more often than not. And I think that's where I've tried to steer away from that quite deliberately.
Yeah. And I think that shows up. I mean, if someone's trying to sell me something, I switch off.
And I think as well, it's a cultural thing. I mean, I think there are different, certainly in Australia, we are not a culture of selling.
Yeah.
We're not used to being sold to. We don't like being sold to as a general rule. So we don't respond to it in the same way. Years ago, without naming the business, I was, involved with an organization that was doing a lot of telemarketing, and it had got them into some hot water in the past. And it had a lot to do with that idea of selling, because the same model worked a treat in the US, where they're much more accustomed to that mentality of being sold to.
Yeah.
So I think that's, you've got to be conscious of that as well.
Yeah. And a part of what we're going to talk about is, I suppose, that storytelling side. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, I suppose, your passion. As I said, you've built the business and you do a lot of good work with business owners to share their stories. So what's your story or passion behind building it, CommTogether, and could you share that?
Yeah, someone once said to me, your career is nothing more than a collection of selected pivotal moments. And I really agree with that. My earliest memories of doing anything that relates back to what I'm doing now was that idea of I used to love listening to the radio and listening to people talking on the radio. And being a cricket fanatic, I would try and listen to the Australian cricketers off in England in particular in the middle of the night. And my parents had bought me a crystal radio set, a build your own crystal radio set. And I'd run these wires out the window and to try and get reception. And somehow I picked up the BBC and would listen to the cricket coverage while I was supposed to be sleeping, and really enjoyed it. And it was the storytelling that they were involved with at that point, because it was that idea that if you can't see the pictures, you have to tell the story. But they weren't telling the story of just, here's a, nice forward defensive shot and it goes out to the fielder, which is all pretty boring. It was everything that was going on around it. It was the cakes that were being made for them. It was the golf that they'd played yesterday. And I was really fascinated with that from an early age. And that kind of developed to more of a fascination in radio. And I remember going to school and, did you hear this on the radio? So being that first person to fill people in on the news kind of was a natural evolution for me to end up in the media and working particularly in talkback radio, but also in TV for a number of years. And then it was a transference of those skills into first the corporate and then the not-for-profit sector, because that art of, as you say, of storytelling and, painting a picture for people with words is so incredibly powerful. I know I worked in television for a little while, and the challenging thing about television is that you can only tell a story based on what the images are that are in front of you. But with radio, you can paint any picture you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, in spite of, we can go live on social media, we can watch countless types of TV from cable to free to air, and yet radio still remains, and podcasts for that matter as well, remain a very powerful medium. And I think exactly that reason.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And I've shared with you in the groups that we're in regard to, I suppose, business owners being a little bit, they're not used to being out there. They're not used to sharing their stories. And I know you're supporting with them with that. So what are some of the stories, or how do you sort of give them that sort of confidence to go out and share their stories? So they've got their best kept secret sitting over here and they want to take it to the world. But again, there's that sort of block. Call it confidence, call it a number of things.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that happen quite often. Is that firstly, people don't necessarily know the story. It's always been something that's been there on the surface for me, and something that I've thought about over a period of time. But I know, again, let's not name names, but someone we both know who I recently did a session with to kind of unpack their story, and it was only after spending a bit of time that he worked out why he was doing what he was doing. And it related back to something that happened, close to 40 years ago. And it's just, that kind of breakthrough is huge. There's sometimes the reasons are really, go back to your, in that case, it was back to his teenage years. But in other cases, it's much simpler. But it's really about, I guess it's not just a confidence thing, but it's an understanding that it's important to tell the story, because people buy from people. Yeah. And the one thing that, that I learned as well from all the time, particularly in talkback radio, and I'm proud to say that I produced programs that there were #1 programs in Australia at the time. And we had massive audience around the country. And yet, the biggest lesson that I learned was that in every conversation, you've got to pretend you're having a conversation with one person. And if you're having a conversation with one person, the person on the other end that might be listening feels like it's them. Yes. That's the art of it. And I think that sometimes people forget, people aren't really interested in the story, or what impact is it going to make? But if you're buying from an individual, and that individual is talking to you and sharing in an easy way, then you absolutely start engaging them. And that's how friendships begin, right? Because it's sharing stories, and whether they're mutual stories or whether they're deep-rooted stories, we see that all the time, and it's just common sense to put that into practice in business as well. Yet, we let a lot of things get in the way of it. We let our fear of being on camera get in the way of it. A fear of not remembering something, of not looking good, there are countless reasons that people find not to do it. And yet put them in if we can be in a room together, they'll happily tell you exactly the same thing. So why the camera destroys it is a bit of a myth in some respects, but it is a mental block that a lot of people have. And yet as I said, it's a critical component of being social with people and engaging.
And we'll go back to that, I suppose, that camera situation and providing that safe environment, which I'm assuming you do. I'd just be really interested in, because I stalk people. So before I'm going to buy, same as you said before, I'm buying off the person. And so these people mightn't even know that they're missing opportunities or whatever, because they're not telling the story. I can go to their website or their posts on LinkedIn, whatever, and because there's no storytelling, I don't feel any connection.
Yeah, it's such an important aspect that, you know, we live in a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week cycle of information. You never know when somebody needs your product or service, and they're going to go and look for that at any given point. Now, they might see it, you know, it might be something that is ticked away in the background there for a long period of time before they decide to buy. But you've got to be in the conversation to know, for people to know that you're an option for them in the future. And I think that, and the more that you focus on that brand awareness idea and building that story over an extended period of time, the more likely it is when the time comes, they will choose to buy from you. And that's, you know, a really important, you know, aspect that people need to consider, is that it used to be, and there is still a little bit of an obsession of now, you know, we're live now. You've got to respond now. If I've not received, you know, 50 likes in the next, you know, half an hour, what's going on? And it's actually not about that at all. It's really about, you know, sustained, continuous engagement. And you know, I was having a chat with someone early today about this. It's kind of like if you get invited to the dinner party and you leave early, you're not in the conversation anymore. And you don't know if someone just after you left, you know, starts up something that might be relevant to you. So you kind of have to be there and be available. And that's the great thing about social media and websites, is that it's not that you literally have to be online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yes.
You just have to have the material available for people to sit back when the time comes to answer the questions and to get to know you in a way that's you know, relaxed and non-threatening. And I think that's the other really critical thing is exactly what you said, stalking people. You know, it's common, right? You know, most people do that. You know, I remember even probably going back about 15 years ago, working for someone, and we were looking to hire someone, and absolutely, even then, 15 years ago, went and stalked them and saw what they were, tried to find out what they were all about on their social media, which, interestingly enough, I do recall this one person in particular, and probably thankful that I've forgotten their name anyway. Their social media platform revealed the fact that they were really excited about getting a completely different job to the one that I was about to hire them for. Wow. And they clearly weren't interested in the one that I was in. So I don't think people are that silly anymore to do that. But it is, but you do want to uncover this. You do want to uncover the story, and it's more and because, you know, whether it's going for a job, it's more than just, you know, presenting a flat resume. It is about unpacking the person, and particularly if you're investing a decent amount of money. I mean, if you're going to go and buy, you know, a $1 pen off someone, well, it doesn't really matter. You don't need to do much stalking for that. You buy it, it's good, it's not good, it's not going to hurt you too much. But if you go and if you're going to invest in a product or service that's worth thousands of dollars, whether, you know, particularly over an extended period of time, you're not going to make that decision just on a whim. So, you know, the more that you've got for people to get to know you, the better opportunity that there is to, you know, that you'll capture them in the future.
And I think you made a really good point earlier. It's around that sort of consistency. So people want that instant gratification. So I've just done a video and I didn't get 10 sales. So it doesn't work. But similar to you, I do believe that you've got to build that storytelling. And it's got to be touch points, and it's got to flow.
It absolutely does. And you know, it's one of the problems that people have is they confuse marketing with sales. They are two very different disciplines. Both are necessary parts of your business, and both complement one another, but they're not the same. You know, the marketing is essentially about building an emotional connection between what's happening in the business and what's happening on the business. It's about, you know, trying to develop the story and the connection and keep that brand awareness happening. So when the opportunity presents itself, you can switch into a sales mode, but you can't go straight into that. You know, it's just not it doesn't work with most people, as we talked about at the beginning. So it's, you know, it's that ongoing evolution that happens as relationships build. And that's the great opportunity, right? Because 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have this opportunity. It was much harder to build relationships with people. And it was much harder to develop a sense of trust as well, and which is an interesting, that whole interesting idea of what trust is. But part of it is really about building that, getting to know someone. If you think about people you've seen on TV for years and years, you would trust them, right? Would you trust any number of the presenters that you see time and time again? Yes, you would. Why? You don't really know them. Well, that's not true, because you do get to know them.
Yeah.
You do get to know them through what they give of themselves over a period of time, and you decide if you like them or not, and if you want to engage them with them or not, particularly if it goes further. So why shouldn't you do that in business? You should.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect point. I just wanted to talk about, we talked a bit about confidence, or what might stop people from the storytelling side. And I think you referenced before, it's more conversational. And I'd like to probably unpack that a bit, because I think that's where the value is, where people are just telling your story and you're capturing that and able to, I suppose, package that up and allow them to take that story to market or to do whatever with. So I'd like to sort of hear more about that.
Yeah, well, it's what we're doing here today, really. It's about asking the right questions, because it's easy to ask innocuous questions of someone, hey, what do you see as the biggest problem in your business today? Well, anyone can answer that about any particular business, but it's not particularly engaging as a general rule, and it doesn't really solicit a story of any description. But if you ask the right questions in the right order, there's an art of interviewing. It's one of those things that gets forgotten, because it's a bit like, everyone expects that they're a photographer just because they've got a camera in their pocket. Well, I know I take average photographs, quite frankly. They're okay for certain purposes, but if I want a proper photograph, I know some amazing photographers who will do some fantastic things. And that's part of it, as well, as is in order to get things right, you do need to be asked the right questions in the right way, so that they're informed. I think if if you're watcher of a lot of talk style TV programs, there are the good and the bad ones, right? And one of the I think one of the really great ones is Graham Norton's show, right? And The reason why Graham Norton's show is so great is because clearly his producers spend a fair amount of time finding out things so that he can ask the right questions to get interesting, amusing stories for the celebrities to tell. Because otherwise it's just another celebrity talking about their latest movie, which is boring, quite frankly, and you can watch it a million times on YouTube. But if you find out, this was something unusual that happened to them, and you can take it somewhere, it makes it eminently watchable. And I think, the advantage, of course, that a show like his has is that he's interviewing celebrities. So by nature, we tend to gravitate towards an interest in celebrities. That's a whole different discussion for another time. But I think in business, you can't assume that. So there are a handful of business leaders who would classify have moved into that celebrity status, but for 99.9% of us, we're nowhere near a celebrity status. So you have to ask the right questions to make it interesting, and to find that thing that just makes a difference. And there are fascinating stories to tell. We could definitely have some interesting conversations about working with organizations that deal with people with a disability, because we both had experience in there, and unpacking some of those stories would be fascinating for some people to hear the back end of. And I think but you've got to know that in the first place, and you have to bother to ask that question in order for that to fulfill itself.
Yeah, good point. That's the art of questioning. I think it's very valid. And a lot of people ask the questions not to get the answer, but just to ask the next question per se. So I love your analogy of it. And I'm going to say there's business owners there that still, you mentioned that marketing word, and they get that anxiousness straight away. But you're talking, and what really resonated with me when we'd spoken over the last few months really is how you're packaging up this offering to business owners where it's not overwhelming. You actually get them in a safe place and do the storytelling, and then you're able to package that up over a period of time. So it's not something that they're doing every week or every second week. So it'd be good just to sort of understand that a bit further.
Yeah, it's a problem that obviously that I've seen over an extended period of time, and wanted to bring together, I guess, the various skills that I've got to deliver it, and it starts with unpacking the questions, and I've developed a series of pre-questions to ask people so that I can solicit those stories, so that interesting anecdote is going to come out and we can deliver that, but in a context of marketing. I mean, I think that's the important thing here is that what I understand what's needed to market a business. That's what my business has been built around, has been purely around, marketing businesses or non-for-profits. And I think that, what we've done is to try and use that as a way of soliciting those questions and then asking the right informed questions to deliver those stories. And what we do is in a very relaxed fashion. So the interesting thing that happens, the magic that kind of happens is, first of all, that people being interviewed in what appears to be a program immediately gives them credibility. And if you ask an informed question, it makes them the expert immediately. So that is really a transference of trust. And it's a way of relaxing people, because yourself, when you're asking people about their businesses, most people are very happy to talk about it and to give an opinion, particularly if you get them to forget that the camera's on. If you're having a conversation and you're asking about something that is not, I'm not trying to trip you up. I'm trying to extract some information that you can then share with your audience. So what actually happens is we do we have a 90-minute session where we record an interview in that session. I'm in a studio and the Better Biz studio, and you can be wherever you need to be. People, because I'm in a studio, it's not important where the person being interviewed is. Yep. And we're just having a conversation online, much like this. And it's asking about interesting questions about the business. My goal is to ask the questions and to play that role of being inquisitive and trying to solicit those things. But it's not my goal to interrupt and to try and set my own agenda. And it's allow people the space to breathe and to tell their story. And, I've seen that can get done so effectively. There are lots of examples of how that has kind of worked brilliantly in lots of different ways. If anyone's a fan of Billy Crystal, they'll remember that he toured here, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years ago, something like that now. And Andrew Denton interviewed him. And that was the whole show, was Andrew Denton interviewing him and soliciting stories from him. And it was fantastic, right? And it was effectively the same set of questions every night, but I'm sure it was told slightly differently every night. Yeah. And this is the same. So what we do is we do the interview for 90 minutes with those informed questions, and then we turn that into a series of short videos, at least 21 videos that you get out of it. Oh. And we show how that content can then be made into something that can work to provide you with content for really 12 months, because there's lots of different ways we can extract, we can teach you how to extract content from that video and use it in multiple ways and populate both your social media, but also your website with informed content. And that's what the important thing is here is the questions that I'm asking designed to solicit that marketing style informed, engaging content from you to share with your audience and to make them privy to a conversation in bite-sized chunks that people will be interested in the future at any time. And that's the great thing. It's at any time that people can engage with that. Yes, you post it today, and maybe in a week's time it's not visible as much in the feed, but people that are stalking you will go back and see it. You put it on the website, they will see it. There are different ways of drawing attention back to that same content. So it's a little bit of magic that happens by doing something. And it's really, it's so less. I mean, you think about it, there's a little bit of time in a questionnaire, you know, say 2 or 3 hours that you have to spend on a pre-questionnaire to get me that information. And then it's a 90-minute session, and then you've got it. And then anything that you get from there, you know, you can hand over to, you know, either we'll do it, or there's any number of people. If you've got you know, an EA, or you've got, you know, plenty of people that will extract the content in a way that will tell you what to do. And away you go and post it, and you've got video. And look, if you don't have video on your, particularly on LinkedIn, then you're just missing the mark. You know, you're missing like 80% of decision makers who make their decisions based on video content. So, you know, you can't afford to not be there, but it's not easy. So hence the reason for the you know, the program that I've designed to, I guess, use my unique skill set and deliver something that I think the market desperately needs.
Yeah. Yep. And I was going to actually watch your one big tip, and I think you just answered it about how important videos are.
It's super critical.
Yeah.
And it is, you know, overall, it's about being in the conversation, and it's allowing people to get to know you. The problem with just posting an article or just a, you know, a nice graphic is that it's flat. You know, there's no personality in that, really. There's no real opportunity to get to know you and what you're about. And I think, you know, the more you let people in and let them hear you telling a story, particularly in the kind of environment that we provide, the more opportunity you have to, you know, build your audience.
I think what I've heard today, so I suppose in closing, is that you've even shared your stories. So we talk about flow, and we talked about people getting to know you, just in a conversational sense. So we're, I suppose, walking the walk, talking the talk, so to speak. Not sure whether I said that right, but that aside, so
absolutely. I mean, it you know, and that's the fun part about it is I mean, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? It's hearing other people's stories is eminently interesting. And you know, and whether it's the, you know, going back to the basics of how it all began, or whether it's just about some small aspect and relating examples and giving a bit more space to that stuff to hear it from their own mouth, because we're all consuming stuff all the time, and so we're a collection of our own experiences and delivering that in a unique way. And I think when people hear that coming from you, rather than something that could be manufactured, whether it's something that's scripted or whether it's something that's written down or whatever else, it's so different when it's coming directly, as they say, from the horse's mouth.
Yeah. So if a business owner wanted to connect with you and just discuss it, just get a feel whether it's right for them, are you able to offer discovery meetings or something similar?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got, so you can either connect with me through LinkedIn, or if you go to betterbiz.online, you'll see the page with the description about the Better Biz program. But on the top there's an option to book an appointment with me, and we do have a free session, and I'll even give you a free report, just to, you know, encapsulate your branding and marketing in just a few harmless questions. But we give you a bit of an insight into what you might be able to do with your branding and marketing in a general sense. And of course, always happy to have a discussion about how the Better Biz program might work for you and your business. And, you know, my goal is always to amaze people. And if I can have a meeting with someone and give them a tip, and if that's all it results in, then fantastic, because, you know, we're trying to help people as much as we possibly can.
Oh, well done. And you've added so much value. I knew you would. So I was excited to have you on the interview. So I appreciate that. And it's just a different conversation around marketing. So I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Michael. Look, I know I'm a big fan of all of the amazing work that you're doing, and these, you know, I'm privileged to be part of the interviews that you're doing with so many amazing people out there, and you know, it's a great and loyal audience that you've got there. So if I can help some people in some way through this, it's fantastic. So thank you for having me.
No, pleasure. Thank you.